Hello, how's it going? Welcome to a brand new video, and I'm Joe. If you're new around here, make sure you click that subscribe button for daily sports and retro gaming content. Plenty of football content coming over this weekend as it's a bumper start to the Premier League season in England. So really looking forward to it. Today we have got my Premier League predictions. I'm recording this on the Friday of the season opener, so of course before the transfer window shuts and before any games have been played. So this is my ultimate predictions for the season. We will go through how I predicted last season and how far off I ultimately was, but do let me know down in the comments your own predictions for the Premier League. And yeah, look forward to the content over the weekend, including looking at some Panini Adrenaline XL trading cards for the Premier League. We're going to be getting Football Manager to simulate the 2024-25 season, and we are going to be bringing back the Retro Show on Sunday as we continue Season 2 of the Retro Show, looking at all of the FIFA games from 1996 up to and including 2023. So let's move on then. We're going to quickly start with last season's predictions. This was my final video of the 23-24 season, and we looked at, well, how I got on this time last year, and it was a decent performance. We scored 44 points, so every place that I am out with a team scores 1 point, and you want to keep that as low as possible. But it's the first season that we've done it on the channel. 44 points, I don't think that is too bad at all. The big ones that, you know, we're out of place were Wolves, 6 points off there. Tottenham, by the way, that should say +4. You know, but those were the two real issues, I guess, with the whole season. There was a few that were 3 out of place. You know, Brighton, Aston Villa, for instance, 4 out of place with Brentford and Burnley. But overall, it was a very strong season last year. 44 points. Obviously, the goal is to better that this year. If I could get lower than 40 points, that would be amazing. I think the ultimate target would be about 30. That would be amazing if I could eventually get to that. But it is going to be so difficult to do that throughout this this whole process, because there's 20 teams and obviously the transfer window hasn't shut yet. So it does make it very difficult, but I did get 4 teams in the correct place last year: Man City and Arsenal, Crystal Palace and Fulham. So fingers crossed we can build on that and get 5 teams right this year. That would be pretty amazing. But first things first, let's get ourselves into the predictions, and the very first team that I'm going to put out there is the team in 20th. And I'm very, very sorry, Leicester City fans, I've gone for you. I was umming and ahhing about this one. There's lots of different teams that I think are in the relegation fight this year. I don't think it's as clear cut as the 3 promoted teams are going down this season like they did last year. I think it's actually very, very tight at the bottom, and I think we will have a very tight relegation battle, and it is going to come down to a few games here and there that could make the difference. Leicester City, I've gone for them in 20th, mainly because I had a look at their squad, and it's not too dissimilar to the squad that went down a couple of seasons ago. They've not really strengthened, in my opinion. They've still got the likes of Jamie Vardy to rely on, but he's very, very old now. He's in his late 30s. It's going to be very, very difficult for them to stay up this season. They obviously lost their manager as well to Chelsea. Steve Cooper coming in, that was the one thing I really thought about and thought, you know, Steve Cooper did a great job at Nottingham Forest. Can he do a good job at Leicester City again? But I've looked at their transfer window. At the moment, not convincing for me. Obviously, they came up as champions, but who knows? Leicester have gone for 20th. I think that'll be quite a surprise for most people. Speaking of Steve Cooper, another season goes by, and I am predicting Nottingham Forest to finally go down this season. They've been flirting with relegation really, since they came into the league. They obviously had a decent first season last year. They finished 17th. They were very lucky that there was 3 teams that were worse than them. I think my main issue with Nottingham Forest now is the manager, Nuno Espirito Santo. Obviously did great at Wolves, did awful at Tottenham, and it wasn't wholly convincing last season at Forest. I think Steve Cooper being turfed out there, very harsh decision. And I think it will come back to bite them this season. I've gone for 19th and relegation for Nottingham Forest. Joining them in the relegation zone for me is going to be Southampton. Obviously, they came up last season and through the playoffs. It's not necessarily cut and dry. If you come up through the playoffs, you go down, but it is fairly common because you've got that 2.5 weeks lag that you sort of lose the march on the other teams that have gone up. And Southampton, they were very poor the season that they did go down eventually a couple of years ago. And I can't see that changing this year. Obviously, Southampton are very, very good at developing young players. I'm sure we will see a few of them throughout this season. They've done okay transfer business, but it's very much looking like they're setting up to go back down and maybe push on in a couple of seasons' time. But I've gone for 18th because I think their home form will be okay. And as I say, it's very tight. They might finish 17th. They might finish 20th. I really don't know. Speaking of 17th, and a team that you've not seen yet, probably were expecting to see because you see them in every single prediction video. Just like Luton Town last year, I have predicted Ipswich Town to be the best of the promoted teams, the one that you'd least expect to do well in the Premier League. I'm going to go 17th with them. Obviously, the manager, very highly rated, was touted with a Chelsea job earlier in the summer, committed his future. Very risky move, but a little bit like when Steve Cooper came up with Nottingham Forest. We've seen it with Rob Edwards last year with Luton Town. That stability could do them or serve them very, very well this year. Ipswich play a particular brand of football, a little bit like Burnley did last year. Burnley really struggled. I think Ipswich will be a little bit better. Obviously, it's a long, long time since they've been in the Premier League, 2002-03, I believe. So, we're looking at over 20 years. And I fancy them to get a few results. I think the start to their season is crucial. They can't afford to do what Luton did last year and give themselves too much work to do. They've got to pick up points early on, a point a game from the first 10. If they're on 10 points after 10 games, I think they've got a decent chance of staying up, and fingers crossed they will, because I think it's great to see them in the Premier League, and long may it continue. Moving up the table, 16th, I've gone Fulham. Now, obviously, they lost Mitrovic last year. They've lost João Palhinha this year. It just feels like Fulham are not necessarily strengthening. I think that they are a team that sort of were up and down last year. They started well enough. They were in the top 10, but just sort of dropped off. I think Fulham could quite easily go down this season, but their home form does tend to save them, and I've gone with 16 for Fulham, but it could easily be 18th, 19th. It could easily be 12th or 11th. It really depends on the final few weeks of the transfer window. Now, this is the first brave one I've gone for. I think 15th, I've gone for Brighton. Now, Brighton have obviously had a very good few years in the Premier League. They've been a strong, consistent team in the league since Chris Hughton brought them up so many years ago. Graham Potter, of course, continued that work, did a really good job. De Zerbi came in and they had a fantastic season in his first year, finished 11th last year, and I think they're on a bit of a downward spiral. They've got some great players. They've lost some good players as well. Pascal Gross has gone. Ansu Fati isn't here again next season on loan. I think they could struggle a little bit personally. And I think it's not quite second season syndrome because they've been in there a long time, but teams starting to work them out a little bit. and there's only so many times you can sell your best players and bring in better ones, if you like, before it stops working. That was the case with Newcastle many years ago. The likes of Sunderland, dropped down very, very quickly. Brighton, I think they're in for a struggle this season. I don't think they'll go down, but I don't think they'll be trouble in the top half. That could be one that comes back to bite me, because Brighton quite often surprise, but are obviously not very aware of their manager and what he's done in the past. So it's sort of a tentative prediction from me. And I think they'll stay in the league. They'll be absolutely fine. They'll get some great results, but they'll get some terrible results in there as well. Another team that I thought would do worse than they did last season is Bournemouth. Obviously, Iraola came in after Gary O'Neill was sacked quite harshly, but it worked out for them in the end. Certainly in the second half of the season, they were great. First half of the season, they were really struggling, and actually, I think he was 1 or 2 games away from being sacked. They were looking like nailed-on relegation candidates. But second half of the season, they did really well. It's going to be interesting to see how they deal with the loss of Solanke. Obviously, he went to Tottenham for £50 million. They've got to reinvest that. They've got to get somebody just as good up top. Probably a young prospect. Maybe even a couple of options to try and bridge that gap of goals. But yeah, that's going to be their most important thing is this last few weeks. If they don't sign good players, they could be dragged into that relegation battle quite easily. But I've gone for a comfortable mid-table 14th. Another team that I think the transfer window is important for is Brentford. They've held on to Ivan Toney for now. Obviously, had a decent Euros when he did play. He's been hotly linked with Arsenal. I think a team like Newcastle could do with somebody like Toney. We've obviously got Isak, we've got Callum Wilson when he's fit, but it would be nice to have another option up there, and Ivan Toney would sort of fit the bill with that. I think Tottenham could have had a job with him, but they've went for Solanke. So it really depends on whether they hold on to Toney. If they do, they could well finish a little bit higher than 13th. I think if they lose him, again, they could be dragged into the relegation zone. But Thomas Frank has done a terrific job at Brentford over the years, and I trust him to keep going with that. A solid 13th place for them. 12th place, I have gone for Everton. I've seen Everton in a lot of people's relegation predictions this year. I don't think so. I think Sean Dyche has proved me wrong over the years. I think he did a sensational job last season. Considering Everton had points deductions, they were very comfortable in surviving relegation. I think they can push on again this year. Of course, they've lost a couple of great players. Onana's gone. Branthwaite could be going to Manchester United as well. It's going to be about trying to reinvest that money a little bit. Obviously, it's financial fair play that's going to get them. But if they can make some shrewd signings, which I'm sure Sean Dyche can do, he will keep them defensively solid. They will pick up probably the most 1-0s of anybody this season. And I think they'll have more than enough to keep out of this battle on my left-hand side here, because there's so many teams down there that could be dragged into relegation trouble. And I just don't think Everton are going to be one of them. Could be wrong, though. Who knows? That could be one that comes back to bite me. P11, I've gone for Wolves. Obviously, I predicted them to finish 20th last season. Gary O'Neill took them over at the last minute. Did a terrific job last year. They were riding in the top half for some of the season, and I think they can do similar again. Some of their transfer business does worry me. They have lost, obviously, Neto, and they haven't really brought in too many replacements yet. Again, it's going to be another 2 weeks. I think there's going to be a lot of business on deadline day this year. There's teams that have had some big sales, and I know financial fair play does play a part in all of this, but I think the likes of Wolves, the likes of Bournemouth, the likes of Brighton even, could well be making some big signings over the next few weeks. And Wolves, it's an important one for them, but I think they've got just about enough to finish mid-table. Into the top 10 then, and in 10th I have gone Crystal Palace, second year in a row. I did go 10th last season. It felt like a bit of an over-prediction, but they had an awesome end to the season under Glasner, and I think they will continue to do that. They've held on to Guéhi so far. Whether he stays or not, I'm not sure. I'm not entirely sure. They need that to happen. They've obviously got Joachim Andersen potentially going out as well. They're thinking about bringing back Wilfried Zaha. I mean, he's 32 now. He's not as good as he was, but definitely will give them an option. They've lost Elise to Bayern Munich as well. So it's about how they reinvest some of this money that they are getting in for these big players. A little bit like Brighton. There's only so long that you can get rid of your best players and bring in cheap alternatives that do just as good a job. They could be in trouble if they lose Guéhi and don't replace with solid defensive replacements. But we will see. I've gone 10th. It could be a bit lofty, but I couldn't see them finishing below any of the teams that I've put below them. So that's how they've ended up in 10th. Pretty crazy. And another team similar, West Ham. Now, lots of people are very excited about West Ham. I've seen some people even predict top 4 for West Ham, which I think is a bit ambitious. Obviously, Lopetegui has taken over. Was in charge of Wolves, did an okay job at Wolves, has been at Real Madrid, has been at Spain in the past. Never really been somebody that's convinced me a whole lot, and I think David Moyes did a terrific job at West Ham. I think it probably was time for him to move on because the fans were, well, they didn't want him anymore, basically, did they? I'm fairly convinced they never wanted him, unfortunately for David Moyes. I think it'll be a tough first few games for them, but they'll get into it over the season. They've made some cracking signings, very ambitious signings. It's whether it'll all come together, whether they'll gel. Can they break that top 8? I'm not entirely sure, so I've gone P9 for them this season. Into 8th position, a team that I predicted to finish 3rd last year. Lots of people made fun of me for that. They finished 6th come the end of the year, but they've gone for an absolutely insane transfer policy again this summer. They've signed hundreds of millions of pounds worth of players again this year. They're going to be selling a whole load of players, including Conor Gallagher. That seems a very odd decision to me. I know he only had a year of his contract left, but yeah, whoever can tell me what the policy is at Chelsea, please do, because it is very confusing what they're doing. Obviously, Pochettino went in May by mutual consent. I think had they kept Poch, I'd have been predicting them top 4 this season. I'm not entirely convinced by Maresca. Will he come in and do a good job at Chelsea? I'm not sure, but they've got strength. I think they are better than ultimately the 12 teams that I've got below them. If everything goes well for Chelsea this season, they could be title contenders, but they could well struggle again. And it's quite sad to see Chelsea struggling as much as this. Certainly, as I was growing up and really getting into football, Chelsea were a consistent top 4 team, and now they're a bit of a joke since Abramovich left. But hey, that's the way it goes. In 7th place, for the second season in a row, I've gone for Aston Villa. Now, obviously, they finished top 4 last season. Lots of people backing them to continue that this season. They've been very ambitious in the transfer window. They've signed some excellent players and young players as well that are going to be hungry and wanting to succeed. So Aston Villa could very well finish in the top 4 again. I think a little bit like Newcastle, they might get a bit overawed by the sort of Champions League drama. It's been a long time since Villa have been in the Champions League, so just like Newcastle, I think we'll see a little bit of a drop-off, particularly if there's some big injuries to some of their star players like Ollie Watkins, of course. But we'll see. I really do rate Aston Villa. I think Emery is possibly a little overrated by people. I think Emery is a fantastic manager, but people are going a little over the top, in my opinion, in all of their credit for him. I do think you look back at his time at Arsenal, wasn't great. Obviously, following Wenger. I'm not fully convinced that he is going to turn them into title challengers at least. But, they had a very good season last year. I just think they'll have a slight dip this year. But still top 7, that would be an amazing achievement for them. Into 6th place, I've gone for Postecoglou's Tottenham. Obviously, they started last season very, very well. Again, a couple of smart signings, and I think they've improved. They were only 2 points off the top 4 last season, and I've got them to finish 6th. They could well be in that top 4 battle, but they're going to have European football again this season. That could be something that they struggle with. But certainly, I think we'll see some progress. I just think other teams around them are possibly going to do better. One of those teams is my team, Newcastle United. Maybe a little bit lofty going top 5 with Newcastle, but the big thing for me this year is that they've got no European football. They have made a couple of smart signings. We're going to get Tonali back at the end of the month. And generally, last season was on a very, very small squad because we had so many injuries, and we still managed to finish in the top 8. I believe we finish? I think we finished 8th last season. Or was it 7th? I can't remember. Basically, we didn't get European football. It was 7th or 8th, interchangeable with Man United. But I think Newcastle will come strong again this season. I think they'll start the season well. I think a couple of signings between now and the end of the window would be great. Guéhi is a massive one. I think if we can get him, that gives us a star centre-back. When Botman's back, that's going to be amazing. Trippier, will he leave? Will he not? I'm not sure. We've got Livramento. I'd like to see Trippier stay around. Livramento as well in there. Lewis Hall in there this season. I think we have got some really good strengths in there. We just need to try and add some of the finishing touches, and I think we can finish above Tottenham and Villa this year. In 4th place, I've gone for Liverpool. Now, this is a bit of a wild card because obviously Slot has come in to replace Jurgen Klopp. We don't know how that's going to go. Liverpool have got a terrific squad. They've got terrific firepower up top. They could well win the league. Who knows? But there's just something. I've got a feeling Liverpool won't do as well this season. A little bit of a drop-off after Klopp, and they'll come back strong, qualify for the Champions League. And hopefully we'll see some great football from them this season. And that means that in 3rd place, I cannot believe I'm saying this, but I've predicted Man United. Now, this is a ridiculous prediction from me because I don't rate Ten Hag. I don't think they've had the best summer of transfer signings. I do think they've done some good business. They're still lacking a striker for me, a world-class striker. If they go in and get Ivan Toney, I think Man United could do very, very well this season, but they're not going to do that. I actually think this will be off the back of Ten Hag being sacked by Christmas. I think Man United are going to struggle again. They're going to be in the lower reaches of the top half. They're probably going to be out of the Europa League by Christmas, and somebody else will come in. Now, whether that's Southgate, whether that's somebody else, I don't know. It could be Pochettino. I think it's going to be on their second half of the season with a new manager. I think they're going to be rejuvenated and a little bit similar to when Ole Gunnar Solskjaer came in the other year as an interim manager, just revitalise that team a little bit. And I think as Liverpool, Newcastle, Tottenham, Villa, as they get a little bit leggy towards the end of the season, I think United will go from strength to strength after a few top quality January signings. That's my big prediction. If they stick to Ten Hag, 8th. I think, is their best. I'm going to be honest with you. So that leaves me with 2 teams left. And of course, they are Manchester City, defending champions for the 4 years in a row, and Arsenal, who have, for want of a better word, bottled the last 2 titles. So I think actually Arsenal have been probably slightly better than Manchester City the last 2 years. They've gone away. They've recruited a few more players. Jurrien Timber's going to be back from injury. I think that's almost like a new signing for them. I think they're maybe one signing away from being comfortably the best team in the league, and that is a striker. Can they go and get Tony? Can they go and get somebody else? You know, that's going to be the big question over the next couple of weeks. I think they've done very well over the years to build this team. Man City, they've lost Alvarez. Bit of a strange sale for me, that one. They've obviously brought in some other players, but are they any better? I don't know. Winning it 5 years in a row, unprecedented. I think it's going to be very, very tough for them to do. So I have actually gone. Is it this one? No, it's not this one. Where am I? There we go. I've actually gone for Arsenal to win the Premier League this season. It's going to be very tight again. I just think the last 2 years, the experiences that Arsenal have had in losing the league the way they have done, I think that they can go on and do it this year. They've done some decent business. I think one more signing for Arsenal and they will get there. You will notice I have also put 5 Champions League spots in. That's because I think at least 2 English teams are going to do pretty well in the Champions League this year. That will allow us to get a 5th Champions League spot, which will push everybody else down. So that means everybody down to Chelsea will qualify for the Conference League, providing that the top 8 win the cup competitions, or the top 5, if you like, win the cup competitions, and therefore those sort of European places don't get taken from the league. But that's it. That is my 20 predictions for not the Barclays Premier League anymore. I'm living in the past, for the Premier League 2024-25. Now, let me know what you think down in the comments. Let me know any predictions that you've got. Obviously, if there's monumental changes in the transfer window over the next few weeks, I might do a little updated video on the 1st of September just to sort of rejig the order a little bit. Say that Leicester City get taken over by a tycoon and they go and sign £500 million worth of players by the 31st of August, then I might want to say they're not going to finish 20th. But that, at the moment, is the way that I see the league finishing. How many points am I going to score this season? The target is 30. That would be amazing. If I could get 30 points or less, that would be absolute god tier of football. So yeah, that's what I'm looking to do. And fingers crossed, we can do it. Let me know your predictions down below in the comment section. Now, the other thing is, of course, I have got FPL League in play. That's last season's team. That's not this season's team. I'll probably do a separate video on that. It might be a short or something, but I will leave the link to that in the description for this video if you do want to join. I've restarted the league, so if you joined last season, it will just continue over with your team, but you need to make sure that your team is in by 2 hours before kickoff tonight when the team news goes live. So make sure that you are quick with that. But yes, if you have enjoyed it, give it a big thumbs up down below. Subscribe for plenty more daily sports and retro gaming content. And I hope you guys are having a wonderful day. Thanks for watching, and goodbye. Arsenal to win the league.